Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey there, Meteorologist Aaron Tuttle, back with you again. I always enjoy reading your comments as we get loaded up. They say, give it to me straight, no nonsense, no scariness. I just want to know the deets. So thanks for coming here. You're right place, right time. You found the AT's weather. So you folks from California, welcome. New York, welcome. Oregon, Colorado, East Coast, West Coast, doesn't matter. Welcome Oklahoma. Welcome AT's weather. We're going to talk about the storms that are coming our way for tomorrow. You probably heard some big scary terms getting thrown around here for the last couple of days. We are into our prime of severe weather season, meaning that we have kind of the peak of the climatological aggregation of all of our storms, and you average it out. This time of the year in this part of the country, we usually see our most numerous and most highest probability. So when it comes to tornadoes, that fits right in the middle of that. So that's why we're here in the middle of May, and we do have these occasional times we have to deal with some storms that do produce some tornadoes. Now it looks like tomorrow, I'm going to give it away. I'm going to give it away. Yeah, we're going to see some tornadoes tomorrow. All right, so there we go. I'd like to see some tomatoes tomorrow, but those are still growing and it's still just a green plant right now. But kudos to Jody for getting out there and doing some gardening. So I'm looking forward to some fresh tomatoes later. All right, let's take a look outside, and also welcome you guys on Rumble. That platform continues to grow, so appreciate you guys tuning in on that and subscribing. More and more of you keep signing up every single day as you finding me. Go, hey, we've got weather on Rumble? You sure do. And you got good weather at that from a real meteorologist. Believe it or not. There's a lot of fake ones out there, but you got a real one right here. And I'll tell you the science behind it, do a little education. It's almost like a little mini weather classroom one-on-one. If you stick around long enough, you'll start to pick up a lot of the terms, and you'll actually become an armchair meteorologist yourself, or as Jody likes to call it, a backyard meteorologist, and you can do your own forecasting. You can, impress your family. You say, hey kids, guess what's going to happen tomorrow? And they'll believe you because, you're the parent. But anyway, so again, welcome on Twitter as well. That platform is still changing. So looks like Elon is bringing back Periscope. I really don't understand what the difference is, because Periscope and the live stuff I use now is on the backbone of Periscope. So it's not like it really ever left. You just don't have the little hearts that go around. Otherwise, it's live video broadcast. I'm not sure what the big deal is, but whatever. He'll tweak it some more, and I'll still be there broadcasting live on Twitter. Maybe we'll have some more functionality, more interaction, I guess, is probably what's going to happen with that as they resurrect it from the dead. And then on YouTube, of course, you guys are always good in the house. Out there currently, we had a really good sunset. We get those clouds around here. We do make some really nice sunsets around here. But, of course, I just missed it, so that was just a few moments ago. Temperatures out there, 72.9 degrees, a little bit on the milder side of things. I actually like the evenings this time of the year. They're not bad. Most times they're not too humid, so we can deal with it. I think it's pretty nice. You're going to put a little fire out there in the backyard patio, get your chimney going, something like that. If you like a weather station like I've got, pictured right there on the screen, the Tempest weather station, hit that QR code at any time. It'll take you to a link where you can pick one up and get you a discount on it, 10% off, using promo code ATsWeather. All right, with all the housekeeping done, let's get on to business, shall we? The first thing I want to show you is the radar, because I actually do have a little bit of rain out there. Now, it's mostly out across far eastern Oklahoma and northern Oklahoma. And some days there's some heavier showers. Might even see some pea-sized hail thrown in. None of this is severe, nor is expected to be. There's a little heavier shower up around the Ponca City region. And there's some others here in northeast Oklahoma and Tulsa area and back out east and southeast from there. Here in central Oklahoma, there's a little bit of moisture around, but it's not rainfall. Now, another thing I'm going to give away, we talked about at noontime today, where I thought kind of the sweet spot was to watch for tornadic thunderstorms, which I think will develop tomorrow afternoon. And I kind of bounded it in this little area that I'm going to draw for you on the maps. I know not everybody's map savvy. Now, if you are new to Oklahoma, you've got to learn your nearby town. You've got to learn what county you're in. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to get acclimated pretty quick because the weather will teach you otherwise. Okay, so we'll start it from really kind of around El Reno down toward Chickasha, back into Lawton, and then kind of back out into this area here. I kind of favor this zone for development for tomorrow afternoon for potentially tragic thunderstorms developing quite rapidly. And then those would, I hate to say it, move in this fashion. So any of these thunderstorms that do develop out here will be capable of producing tornadoes into the Oklahoma City metro area. So as always, you seek shelter on the lowest floor of whatever structure you're in, away from all outside walls and windows, and put as many walls between you and the outside as you can. We'll get some more of that here in a minute. Meanwhile, temperatures for today, nice. I liked it. They were into the lower to mid 80s. There were some 90s out into the Panhandle region. We cooled back down to the 60s and 70s. Winds haven't been all that bad lately, so they're still a little gusty in the Panhandle, but otherwise most of the state's doing pretty decent. We got some good rain today, some of you. This little area just north of Byers, this little patch of green here, just southeast sides of Norman, picked up about an inch to an inch and a half of rain, man. Just little spots. Here in eastern Oklahoma, near the Arkansas border, same kind of idea, kind of hit and miss. So it wasn't, it was scattered in nature. It wasn't widespread, unfortunately. So there wasn't a whole lot of people that got that kind of rainfall. But, at least we got some good stuff. I know we need it out here. It's the same story every year, it seems like. Here's a look at the upper levels reflected in the satellite viewpoint. We do have an upper level low that's centered right about here. And this low is drifted from central Texas, has been moving to the northeast, and will continue to move in this fashion through the night tonight into tomorrow. So yeah, it's an odd movement. That's why these storms kind of rotated today from kind of this fashion almost, because it was pinwheeling around the upper level low as it traveled. So that's why the storm is moving kind of in an opposite direction than we normally would see. These guys out here are just kind of stationary, not really doing much, with rain to beat the band up here in Colorado as well, and nothing else in between. Okay, so what system's going away? The new one's coming in. Let's see. Here is a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook for tomorrow. So we are in an enhanced risk across Kansas and a good area here of central and northern Oklahoma. This is the tornado threat. The little highlighted yellow area is another tick upward of probability, 10% shaded. And that does include Oklahoma City metro area and into central and western Kansas. This little red area and hatched area is a big area for hail and typical winds. So in other words, in this time of the year, you always have to throw in a little wind and hail. The question is, how big will the hail be and how strong will the winds be? Let's take a look here at the Weather Service, a little zoomed in view of that. It has that enhanced risk. It does cover the area mentioned earlier, kind of in this sweet spot as the kickoff, I think. And then this up here is a question. We'll see what happens when I look at the ingredients here in a minute. But yeah, that's baseball-sized hail. You know what? It could be a freak thing to get something like that up to golf balls, but baseball is plenty big enough. That's stupid size hail. And then you've got wind speeds, again, up around 80 miles per hour. And this is interesting. This isn't one of those little low deals or very low. It's in the medium category. So it does mean you're going to need to pay attention for tomorrow. Make sure you have a NOAA Weather Radio program ready to go. Get my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It's free on Apple and Google Play. It will predict the tornadoes before they develop, giving you more time to seek shelter. You can find it on Apple and Google. Again, AT's Weather to Go. If you look at the eastern Oklahoma, not nearly as high on the severity list. Golf ball, 70, and low on the three categories. Okay, has anything else changed? Let's take a look at the algorithms. Algorithms kind of favor this little brown spot here across central, even down to southern Oklahoma, right along the border, and then back up here into western Kansas. And then this is the hail in this region here, and then this is wind. So algorithms are on board, at least for the general area, although they will differ in the magnitude. Okay, so let's take a look at the upper level low that's going to cause this action. It is coming across New Mexico, this little guy right here. This is energy associated with it. Now watch how it kind of zips in this fashion, and it kind of bypasses central Oklahoma. So we don't have a lot of brute forcing in the upper levels that we normally do with storm systems that come out with an upper level low because the track is too far to the north and west. But this time of year we trade that with more instability. So it's a trade-off. We do have a little trailing piece though, here in this region, and it's enough because it's going to keep us in a southwest flow in the wind field. So what it'll do is kick up the winds here a little bit. So if we look at the wind speeds at 500 millibars, which is at that same level we just looked at, we do have a speed max that comes in this area. So that will enhance the thunderstorm development. Now aloft, higher than this, winds are mediocre and pathetic. What that will mean is a messy cluster of storms. I described this at lunchtime tomorrow of how that evolves. I'll talk more about that here in a second. Here's a look at the lower levels. This is along the dry line, which does indicate a lot of lower level instability along that dry line to help trigger off some showers and thunderstorms. Right now, the model data suggests we should be seeing some some severe weather develop. All right, so I'm going to use the HER for the dew point map of where we kind of track where the dry line is going to be. Honestly, the models are having a tough time with it here in the last 24-hour period, which really stinks. As good as we get, they're never perfect, and sometimes they get screwy on us. But this is what it's trying to allude to. You got a good surface low down here in southwest Oklahoma, and the reason for that is, so in other words, you kind of get a dry line kind of sets up in this fashion here, and this would kind of be another little area of low pressure that develops in what you call a dry line bulge in this region. And what that means is you have a secondary surge where dry air kind of punches in, and on the back side, or on the east side of it, you get the moisture that rotates in and feeds in to the surface low. Now, why is this important? Because it's an enhanced area of convergence. It's where these winds out here become more easterly at the surface. Now, it really helps for tornadogenesis. All right, and the increase in moisture, this moisture pooling in this region, is moisture convergence. So we have moisture convergence, wind convergence. So in other words, it's a sweet spot to get thunderstorms to develop and break a weak cap, which we'll have for tomorrow. So this will be the quadrant we'll have to watch for thunderstorms. Now the question is it form out here, or is it a little bit more eastward, closer to that box that I had drawn for you on the map? And that is where models are having a tough time to the final position. And unfortunately, they probably won't know until the morning hours, but we do know it's going to be in this general area as where things ought to light up like a Christmas tree as far as severe thunderstorms are concerned. Now, the question is, what happens up here? Well, it's still up in the air. There's not a lot of convergence up here. There's a theta E axis. So there's a moisture channel. You're going to have no cap at all, which is possible because it's closer to the upper level low. So this may not just be a surface trigger, but just a lack of a cap and then a theta E axis trigger, which is a little bit elevated, but it's fine. Either one can produce some thunderstorms. So we are expecting, in other words, the potential for thunderstorms to develop here from Kansas, kind of back building into this area like so. Doesn't mean this whole area will be a solid line. It just means there will be some storms along this region, and wherever those storms do form, they will be the strong ones, producing some large hail, damaging winds, and yes, a couple of tornadoes. Here's a look at the cap strength. The lack of color indicates little to no cap in the model data, so we have that going for us. All right, if we look at the significant tornado parameter, so this is where the models also differ as far as where the placement of this is going to be. As you can see, the brighter the colors represents the greater the atmosphere for those type of conditions. And that it's kind of hit and miss in these spots. You can ignore that in the data. But the big broad area all across this region, it's like in the medium zone. It's not over. It's not crazy. It's enough to do it. It's just not excessive. Sometimes we see excessive numbers, which doesn't necessarily mean anything, by the way, just so you know. It just means this is a measure of the ingredients in the atmosphere that can signify tornadogenesis, and we do have them. So you don't always have to get lost in how strong those numbers are. Like, so for example, here is the HER model, which we looked at a minute ago with the surface, go back here, with the surface low out to the south and west. Now, I'm going to show you something that's interesting. Let's see. Okay, so right around late afternoon, where that little surface low is developing, you have one little tick here that goes, I got a little moisture convergence in here, a little enhanced instability. But because the models are having a tough time with the dry line and how things are evolved, it kind of loses it. All right, so then it ends up with like the other model. It's a secondary development that kind of gets closer in Oklahoma City metro area in this little corridor for any storms that do travel into this region. And so for example, it's like a little hot spot bullseye. If I can even click on it, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. For example, when I click on this, it would show tornado hazard type, good wind shear loft, sounding adequate for tornadoes, large hail, damaging winds, that kind of deal. So in other words, the parameters are there regardless of where you live in this zone that I highlighted along that dry line. That does include Oklahoma City metro area. And if you look at this, the triangle at the surface map, again, you see the twisting with height. So the red bar is the surface wind, and this little black barb is the mid-level wind. So you get this turning with height. So in other words, this corkscrew. So you get a corkscrew like this, all right, as you go up with height. And that's what causes the shear, the turning of the atmosphere. So we've got, anytime you have a little triangle on the map, that's what that indicates. So if you get, for example, so these are all triangles, big triangles. All right, let's go out here. See this? They both go in the same direction. Look at this, they're almost exactly the same. That means there's no shear here. So in other words, you don't get any storms out here. You have to have these big, massive wedge triangles to really get the storms to rotate. Okay, so look at a couple of solutions from the high-resolution model data. This is hot off the presses, so some of this I'll have to look with you fresh. Okay, so in the morning, they do have some of those thunderstorms in Kansas falling apart, western Oklahoma. Let's see, this particular model tries to get some stuff going at 5 o'clock, peppered in that little theta E axis up here, and then down here in the convergence zone. And let's see what happens here for 6 and 7 o'clock. It does try to produce a couple of thunderstorms here, but the atmosphere looks, this is actually really sad. I have never seen this model be so sad in such an environment where it shouldn't be producing such sad output. But it does have helicity tracks on them. Now, helicity tracks are basically where you have hail and wind damage, and in favorable environments, that can signify a tornado. Take home here is that central Oklahoma, for these thunderstorms rolling through, would be tornadic. All right, so let's move those on to the evening hours, 10, 11, midnight through Tulsa. But they lose their punch. So again, if you're watching out here, this quadrant of the state, no worries. Everything weakens by then. It's just general garden variety thunderstorms, nothing tornadic. This model likes a secondary batch overnight into tomorrow there. And then what happens on Friday? I'm going to go ahead and talk about Friday because there's a lot of outdoor graduation ceremonies, and I've been getting messages all week about it. So I want to show you, there's a front in the area stalled out here in central Oklahoma. Models, again, they're struggling. Is it more on the east side or is it more on the west side? But the bottom line, the zone is right here on the western side of the metro. Now, the problem is, if you get storms, say like in this region, and it doesn't necessarily rain right on top of you, but you have outdoor events, if you're within 30 miles of a storm, that's striking distance for lightning. So, case in point, your event's going to be in jeopardy. All right, and that's just the kind of way it looks. This particular output kind of breaks it up northern and southern Oklahoma, not a whole lot central until later. Here's 9 o'clock in the evening, and then there's some more stuff overnight. But grain of salt on this output, I'll tell you that right now because we're going to look at some other data, and each model is going to say something a little different, and the outcome is the same. There's going to be some thunderstorms around the region. Okay, so for another model here in the morning hours, that stuff kind of dies out southwest Oklahoma. In the afternoon, though, look how this stuff breaks up. This is the HER model. Remember that little moisture convergence down here in southwest Oklahoma? So it's a little west of what I liked for the favored sweet spot, which is kind of like in this region. So it's a little west of that, which is fine. These would mature as they move out of this area into my zone, regardless. So if they do develop a little bit further out west, a little early, that's fine. Here's 5, 6 o'clock, moving through this little cluster. Now, this is the difference here. I want you to see the difference between this and our classic supercell thunderstorms. Now, if you've seen radar enough, you will notice, and I'll draw this like so. All right, classic supercell thunderstorm. Looks like what, right? La 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 la. La 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 la. All right, so this is our typical thunderstorm that moves in this direction, and this is our little hook echo. This is where you watch for the tornado. Now, if you notice, this does not look like a classic severe supercell thunderstorm. It looks like a multicellular mini-line multicell garbage. All right, maybe even a line echo wave pattern. So this is what happens when you have weak winds aloft. The weak winds aloft prevent this structure from hanging on very long. Eventually, it starts to get a multicellular junk looking with embedded tornadoes within it. So it's not a clean cut system like we would normally see. It's going to be a hybrid event for tomorrow. So just notice that you're going to have some weird looking radar presentations with just embedded tornadoes kind of here and there because of that limiting factor aloft in the atmosphere. But regardless, if you notice during the evening hours, it does have this cluster moving through the I-35 corridor, including the metro, all the way down south, even development down into North Texas, just north of Dallas, right around Gainesville. And as we head into the 10 and 11 o'clock hours, still going through Tulsa, but not nearly as strong through there as it was in central Oklahoma. So it should be on a weakening trend with that cluster, but needless to say, kind of holding on. And you'll get some pockets of wind and hail within that. You just won't get the tornado threat, or at least you shouldn't at that point in time. And then here is the this particular run for Friday evening, 7 o'clock. So again, remember, we had the other batch, in this area, and now we have this batch in this area. That's what I'm saying. They don't know exact placement. All they know is it's going to be in this zone, unfortunately, which is right where we are. So if you have outdoor plans on Friday, you're going to have to prepare for it. You can use radar to kind of keep ahead of it, but just plan to have lightning in the area. And with lightning in the area, you know what that comes with. All right, let's look at a couple more models. We're going to wrap this up. All right, this one just came in. Let's see what it does. Not much. There are a couple of models that actually don't produce anything at all, believe it or not. Now, that's common. Sometimes they struggle in these weaker environments. When you don't have a lot of synoptic brute forcing and it's more subtle, these models don't do as good. So just because they're dry doesn't mean the forecast will be dry. Let's put that way. That's why you can't just look at a model and go, yeah, it's dry, and then nothing will happen. That's not how that works. Let's see. So here's the evening hours. This one's kind of blowing things up. It's a little late to the party, but see what it does right across central Oklahoma. That's Oklahoma County and surrounding counties. So it does still favor that area, even though it's going to be about the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock hour. And then off to the east it goes as you head into the overnight hours, and then dies out. All right, so let me see what else we got on this one. We also have the FV3. Now this is where this one kind of gets a little excited sometimes. So let's see what it's going to do. Ironically, it didn't get excited at all. It bailed. It said nothing's going to happen. Bone dry. That's a shame. I don't believe that. Okay, let's go to the Friday time period. The difference between on Friday, it still has that push close to the metro, so it does have it kind of coming through Oklahoma County during the 4 o'clock hour, 5 o'clock in this zone here, but it quickly pushes off to the east. Now, this is a caveat. If you can get storms to develop early enough and they can race off fast enough, then you can be okay and it'll be dry for the rest of the evening in central Oklahoma. But you see how hard that is to predict and time if you're going to, you're Vegas odds on that one. You're basically setting everything up and you're going, everybody just hold tight. Hold tight. It's going to start at 4, it's going to end at 5, and then we're good. Everybody just don't panic, don't cancel. That takes some cojones. So I'm just saying that's what you're going to have to deal with. That's what's in your forecast for tomorrow. All right, let's look at a couple more, and then we are done. Let's see, I did that one. The tech model. I like the tech model output. Why? Because it's in the sweet spot that I like. See that right there? And these are little helicity tracks. Again, potential tornadoes here in central Oklahoma. Doesn't have a whole lot up here because we don't have a whole lot of convergence in that region. So I really like this output, believe it or not. Kansas, again, some action in that region, so there'll be some storm chasers up there as well. The helicity track kind of diminish. So once we go to the midnight hour onward, as it travels in eastern Oklahoma, here's Tulsa. So the helicity tracks start to die out. So that means maybe some remnants of some pockets of hail, but otherwise that's about it. And the system just kind of vaporizes. And then on Friday, it also keeps kind of most of the stuff down south. There was a little spot here, and that's it. Not a very strong signal. So Friday again, still a little cloudy as far as exact output. But then again, so is tomorrow. I just have to go against it, right? Okay, so let's look at our experimentals. The last one we're going to look at, and then turn you loose. Let's see here. So here's 4. What's it doing? Okay, so this model favors the northwestern quadrant, and it keeps southwestern dry. Now, I will tell you, the prior model of this flipped, and it had it dry here and stormy here. Try being a meteorologist and having it be 100% accurate. Good luck with that. All right, so that's going to move up to the north and east. Helicity tracks with that. Let's see what the difference. Why does it want to do that? Let's see what it does with the dryline position. Okay, so the dryline position, it actually has the good bulge in this region. So actually, this spot still looks valid for development. It does have some convergence up here, but my guess is it's got a little bit stronger of a cap in this region. It's going to probably go a little stronger in the cap here and then weaker here. So it's going to get those to go, but I think it's in error. Yeah, I don't like that output. It does push that dry air though. Man, it's just hauling it by 7 o'clock. So, interesting. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I'm going to look at on here. I can look at STP. Now remember, this is a completely experimental deal. I mean, it's the researchers are. What I love about today is that the researchers will put their stuff online and we can all look at it together. Now, it may not be perfect. They're going to do a lot of tweaking, but we get to look at the future of the technology and we get to use it either to our advantage or our peril, whichever. All right, so looking at the tornado parameter index, it loves that sweet spot that I drew for you earlier. So it's on board with the parameters. I just don't like its output as to whether or not a storm is going to form. But otherwise, it tells me that this is still the spot you'd want to watch very carefully. All right, let me see what else. We can do updrafts. Yeah. All right, that's really all I need to see about that. Okay, so let's move. Oh, one final note here, just to let you know that and this won't be completely accurate, obviously, but the take home is what you're going to watch for. You see how these big red areas show up? Those are where you get rainfall amounts up to around 3 inches of rain. Now, why that's important is because you get these heavy thunderstorms that move pretty slow, about 25 miles an hour, in these kind of clusters. They can really cause some flash flooding. So if you're in a low-lying area, flood prone, keep in mind, you get underneath the trail of this, then you're going to have to deal with that. All right, that was my last point I wanted to make. Temperatures a little bit warmer than today. Let's see, in the afternoon hours, we're going to be in the 70s in eastern Oklahoma, right around 80. Central and 80s to, of course, it'll be near 90 out here in southwest Oklahoma behind the dry line. And then on Friday, should be kind of a repeat. 80s to the east. Looks like some 70s still hanging in there, trying to anyways, by afternoon. In northeast Oklahoma, barely. Otherwise, out here in western Oklahoma, still more 90s. So kind of a repeat for our Friday. All right, take a look at temperatures here. We head into the weekend, looking pretty good. Oh, it looks really good. Mid-70s. 70s for start of next week as well. And that's much better. I don't know about you, but I'm not ready for the 90s. Overnight lows still in the Bermuda grass zone. So that's pretty good. So it'll be happy. Mine's all greening up now and starting to thicken up, so that's good. But anyway, so that is your extended outlook as far as temperatures are concerned. And we do have some occasional rain signals again through the weekend, probably even into Monday and Tuesday of next week. So Araceli, Araceli. There we go. Araceli. Very unique. Of course, you would ask that. Sharon, yes, I do plan on doing a noontime update tomorrow. What time will the storms be out of Oklahoma City tomorrow night? So your window's through 9 o'clock. So again, it depends on what time, how far back out to the west they start, because they're only moving about 25 miles an hour, so they're pretty slow. It may take a while to clear everything. So just say through 9 is the threat window, and then it's east from there. Is probably the best way to play at this point in time. Let me see. So you did ask about the weekend, and I didn't bother looking because the focus was on tomorrow, obviously. I kind of gave you a quick snap at Friday. But let's just do that here real quick. We'll probably have to go to the global models because we won't be able to go far enough in time. Saturday, let's see. Where are we? Saturday afternoon. Yeah, there's the 80s on Saturday afternoon. All right, so there you go. And then on Sunday, does it go far enough for Sunday? Yeah, it stops at 7 o'clock in the morning. Figures. All right, let's go to the rainfall. All right, so it does have some scattered showers. Let's see, where are we? Oh, interesting. All right, so that upper low, the next one, it kind of kicks through a panhandle on Saturday. So western Oklahoma, hey, holler, is going to get some more rain. How about that? On western Oklahoma. So that's good for you guys in the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma as well on Saturday. So just a little signal, a weak signal of some isolated stuff here this far east to the I-35 corridor Saturday afternoon and evening. Not a huge signal out east from there until we get to the overnight period. Looks like there's Sunday morning. There's a little bit better signal here from the tail end probably of that energy that comes through. Let's go to the European. And we'll see what it does. Okay, so on Saturday, does it do the same? Because remember, we're going to get into a little bit of an error margin. And I have not spent a lot of time looking at this because actually I spent 0 time looking at this because my focus was on tomorrow. All right, so it's Saturday. So it's got those storms more east. It looks like it tracks the low back to the east than it does the panhandle. You can see the arc kind of shape with it. So Saturday, expect some scattered showers and storms, it looks like. Although there's Saturday night and Sunday, some good stuff down the panhandle in southwest Oklahoma. There's still signal here for Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon. Oh, good grief. Look at that Sunday signal. So numerous showers and storms on Sunday afternoon, according to the European model. And that should continue on to Monday, which it does. There's Monday morning, Monday afternoon. It's going to be great for rainfall. I got to see. And there's Tuesday. And remember, severe weather is a lot lower and kept at bay if we're on the cool side, right? So this would be just beneficial rain if things are going well like this. I'll take that any day of the week. Let's see what the total QPF is. QPF is a short notation for rainfall, by the way. All right, so let's see. Stands for quantitative precipitation forecast, if you really wanted to know. All right, so through, let's see, I want to go through Tuesday. So here, through Tuesday, so there you go. It's got, 3 to 4 inches of rain down here in the southwestern quadrant of Oklahoma, and another 1 inch or so in northwest. So there you go. And in the Panhandle, up around 5 in some of those areas. Now, this isn't going to count, just so you know, this will not include those supercell storms that come through tomorrow. Those are convective models, whereas this is a global model, so it's not going to be able to pick that up. All right, so Zay wants a recap because she totally missed it, everything. All right, so here's what's happening. Let me put my little deal back up here. So we'll use this little map right here. All right, so this is the radar just for tonight, but just to show you some cities and stuff is the whole point. All right, put some boundaries on here, outlines for you. So again, there's a model that likes to favor this zone here for potential development around 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. For supercell producing tornadoes, I kind of like this area at that same time, around 5 o'clock, kind of in this zone. It's kind of where I started the broadcast with. So it's a little west from where I would start them. So I would have them here, going up rapidly, and then probably producing tornadoes before they get out of this shaded box. Now, what that means is they can produce tornadoes as they move east through central Oklahoma. That does include the greater Oklahoma City metro area. So if you're asking me, is it Edmond? Could be. Is it downtown Oklahoma City? Could be. Is it Norman? Yeah, could be. It just depends on the actual track, because it won't be one solid line of tornadic storms. It should just be a couple in this area. Maybe 2, maybe 3 is usually how that works out. And then up here in northwest Oklahoma, same kind of idea. You could have a couple of supercells that grow up in this area. Again, they would track to the east and have potential tornadoes with them as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And that time, again, is from the 5 o'clock hour really through 9 o'clock here for, like, say, the central Oklahoma region, I-35 corridor, etc. And once you get past 9 o'clock, everything should be east of I-35, moving away, heading toward Tulsa, and then weakening as it does so. So that's basically what the forecast is for tomorrow when it comes to tornadoes. So let's see. Kevin says NWS is using significant, and you mentioned E of 0 to 2 are both those the same thing. Okay, so let me show you kind of how that happens. I didn't mention the strength tonight. I think I did at lunchtime earlier today. So let me go back here to my little fancy map. Let's see, we'll use this guy. Okay, so let's see, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, let's go 7. All right, so let's just assume that we've got track thunderstorms now moving into like from El Reno area into Oklahoma County, all right, from the west. So where are they getting the strong language? Well, if we go back and look at the parameters in the atmosphere, you have to look at the sounding and kind of figure out, okay, what's it going to be? Well, first off, and I've told this before, is the winds up here are weak, all right? So they're, first off, the direction is not that great, but the wind speed, there's 20 knots way up top, and there's about 40, 45 knots in this region. In reality, they should be closer to, like, this time of the year, 80 knots, 90 knots. So that's the weakness that will allow these clusters, multi-cluster lines, and less of a classic supercell. Now, you can verify that by looking at this little box right here. This little box right here, there's a little word here that says classic supercell. And these represent the wind speeds co-located with this. And they're way over here on the left. Now, if it was a classic supercell, this little red line would be over here. And it's not, all right? So that means it's going to be hybrid cells that'll be messy, which means you can also have a tornado that's not visible, that it's one of those what we call, rain-wrapped, occluded. So a lot of storm chasers may be chasing them around, and they may not see a dadgum thing because of the way this is structured. Okay, so that's the other thing to look for. The other things are good for tornadoes, low LCLs, dew point 68 here, temperature of 79. So not that big of a depression. The shear 334 meters per second squared, which is in the surface to 3 kilometer zone, up about 200 for the surface to 1 kilometer, which is perfect. Let's see, some other indices. The wind damage scale is up near 2, ship models over 1, so again, that means large hail, damaging wind, and the Cape values up around 3,000 to 4,000, depending on which level you want to look at. So all that is for strong instability for the thunderstorm. All right, so your standard, typical ingredients that you need. Now, for the actual tornado part of it, they can go back and look at analog data, and they can compare all these little indices in the basket that we talk about, and they can look at all these little numbers, and the computer algorithm will then assign what the potential strength of a tornado will be. And you will look here on this whisker plot down here on the bottom. All right. So what you see here is this red line that goes right through here. So now you have to look at the whisker plots and say, okay, so what does that equate to? All right. Well, this is an EF0, so it's way taller than that. EF1, yep, bigger than EF1. EF2, yep. There's a little tail that just touches EF2. Okay, go to EF3. It's even above the box plot of the EF3. And then we have to go to EF4, which is right in the middle. All right, so this is a statistical output. So if you ever go take stat class, you'll use these a lot. So what you want to know is you want the bulk of the data to be in the box. If it's outside the box, it's outliers. All right, so it's actually well in the box for EF4 tornado. And it's, of course, above the box, which means it's no problem. In this particular data set that we're looking at, this says an EF2, EF3 is not even questionable. That's a done deal. The EF4 is, all right, it's right in the box where it's in the margin. We could probably get one. Now, I picked just a random spot on the map. I may have picked like the sweet spot. In other words, I may have picked the best data accumulating all in that one area. Now, the caveat is, will that even be realized, for one thing? Number two, will there actually be a storm that goes across that zone, right? And then number three, is the model wrong to begin with? Does it have some of these parameters a little bit too excited about? But anyway, so that's how they get some of these values here when they're talking about significant tornadoes. So a significant tornado is an EF2, so that's the middle one. So the weak tornadoes are the EF0, EF1, the most common. EF2 is the next one in line. And it's not quite common, but you're going to see this more than you'll see in EF3, and certainly more than you're going to see in EF4 or EF5. All right, so the statistic-wise, most of this stuff is in this first category with the 0 to 1. Then you have the secondary category EF2 with a little 3 thrown in, and then way on the outlier, which is like maybe 5% of all tornadoes, you're talking about EF4 and 5 combined. So it would take quite a lot to get that. And with this structure in the atmosphere, I don't see it getting to an EF4, just saying. So just because these parameters are there, the lower levels, you still have to have everything else, in the upper levels look good too. It's a whole total, you're baking an entire cake with all the right ingredients. You can't just leave one thing out and have it taste just like the person next to you that put everything in. It's not going to happen. So atmosphere is the same way. So anyways, that's where they kind of get the severe magnitude of it. So when I looked at the data earlier, I was comfortable with saying like an EF3 potentially at the worst end, but I kind of focused on maybe the for sure EF0, EF1, no problem. EF2 more likely. So I discussed at noontime kind of what an EF2 can do, and that's just because I expect the supercell structure not to last very long, and to be convoluted with updrafts getting entrained with precipitate from above, and just a bunch of nonsense when the cells are trying to cycle and fight each other. So I'm thinking that will help lessen the tornado strength myself. So will I be wrong? I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. But that's what it looks like to me in the data. So that's why I didn't say anything stronger than that at lunchtime. And even tonight, even though that cherry-picked spot that I just happened to grab looked, really, quote, juicy, that storm chasers get really excited about. I'm not that excited about that one. So, but regardless, doesn't matter what kind of tornado that you hit or get, it's always the same. Lowest floor, away from all outside walls and windows. You can grab a mattress if you want. You can put sporting, stuff on the kids. We just talked about that. Get in the bathtub, closet, stairwell. The point being is you want to be in the middle. That's it. Away from all the outside walls. And even the EF2s, and I showed you some damage on Twitter from the last event we had with Norman and Shawnee. We showed some pictures of some folks on Twitter that did the views right afterwards, where they take their drones, right? And we could show you in every home where was the best spot to seek shelter from a tornado, because we could see the wall removed, we could see the roof removed, and in every one of those cases, guess where it was? In the middle. The only place where it didn't matter, mobile home. They just do not hold up. Now, if it's an EF0 in your mobile home, no problem. But are you going to know it's an EF0 that's coming for you, and so you're going to ride it out? I don't think so. Just be glad that it was an EF0 if it turns out it hits your mobile home directly. But an EF1, I think mobile home, most of it might still be okay. Might roll, but worst case scenario. But definitely an EF2, it's out of there, it's gone. So there's nothing left in mobile home from that point onward. So it's a terrible place to seek shelter. So you always have to go find somewhere else. If it's somewhere in town, if it's a friend nearby. You know, they say, I've never done this. I don't know if anybody has done it, but it's always a worst case scenario. It's get into a ditch. And you're like, well, why would you get into a ditch? All right, so this is where you get into theoretical physics. It's not because they had a ton of people in a study go, hey, there's a tornado coming. I want all of you run out there in a ditch and see what happens. It's not because that's what happened. That would be a horrible study. It's just because of fluid dynamics. You want to be at a very low-lying area. Because if you're in a low-lying area, believe it or not, the winds will rush over that zone. Now, it can sometimes cause some low pressure. You know, it also causes high pressure. Anyway, it depends on what's happening. But if you're in that low-lying area, the idea is that friction and everything else around you will prevent you from being swept away because the wind won't be as strong down in that little valley, believe it or not. So that's the idea. And even so, like in a tornado, for example, the winds right at ground level are weaker than they are just a few feet up and up and up and up, just because of friction. So when Doppler radars are measuring these tornado speeds, like the mobile Doppler radars, they're usually not measuring right at ground level. They're usually measuring, it could be 100 meters off the ground. It can be whatever arbitrary, depends on how close they are, what volume scan they're running, and they're going to measure the maximum winds at that level. Nobody lives at that level, so technically it's not accurate for what the ground is. So there's always some argument in the research world as to how to deal with that. But point being is, that's the reason why that they tell you to get into a ditch. Because if you're in a car and you try to ride it out, I don't know if you've seen some of the videos going around from cars. And if it's a strong enough tornado, you don't want to be in a car. It's a brutal car wreck is what that is. And you've seen people injured severely in car wrecks, right? It's the same thing, although this time it's nasty. We did see one, it was at nighttime. Was it Nebraska or something? It was a storm chaser, maybe it was Iowa. They had a tornado at night, and there were car headlights flying around the tornado like this. And I just like, I have never seen that before. I was like, ugh, I hope there was nobody in that car. But with the headlights on, they probably were. They probably didn't see it, right? They probably had no clue, drove right into it, and it ran right over them, and they went out for a ride. And I have no idea what happened to them, but I can tell you that probably didn't end well. So you don't want to be in a car either. That's the idea. Now, I will tell you, there was a certain meteorologist in town. Not a meteorologist. There was a certain weather guy in town that told everybody to drive south during a big tornado event here in 2013. And that clogged up all the roads. All right. And then that storm ended up going through all the clogged roadways with everybody on it. That was obviously a horrible thing to say and a bad decision because you're in a car. Now what are you supposed to do? You can't escape. And then now you can have a ditch. But if that storm slows down and all of a sudden now it's a flash flood event, now you got a problem because you're in that ditch with flash flooding. So it is one of those deals where, honestly, your life is best left up to you. However you want to secure its time on Earth. If you want to prepare and plan and think ahead, do it. Now, obviously, that means you value your life and you want a little extra time. If you don't, and you just want to willy-nilly and take your chances, well, then that's the way it is. But obviously, preparation is typically the best way to deal with these things, and certainly not freak out about it or stress out about it. Because remember, these are still needles in a haystack, literally, proverbial, compared to the size of Oklahoma, the size of a city, the size of a county, the size of the state. these tornadoes are teeny tiny. They're from a couple at most, maybe 100 yards for the small ones. And then from 100 yards, they can be as big as like a mile wide, but the strongest part of a tornado is not in that entire mile usually. It's in the little vortices that dance around internally in that smaller space, which can only be maybe a tenth of a mile. It kind of depends. You can have like a roaring, 100 mile per hour wind all around this large area, but the devastating part of the tornado that actually causes the loss of the homes, etc., could be just little vortices that kind of move around, and you could be completely missed by a vortice. That's how sometimes you can see these homes where one side is like half of it's removed and the other half perfectly staying. Well, the vortice went through and slapped that half off, and the other half still remained, even though it was in that general tornado area, maybe a 80 plus mile per hour winds. It didn't get hit by the vortice, so it's fine. So that's one way. Another way maybe is where you do get a home that's hit, maybe a smaller tornado with those smaller suction cup vortices, we call them, and it rolls to the living room on the east side, but the west side of the living room is fine. You got little teacups right on the counter, on the mantle. And they're all just sitting there like right where you left them. Vortices. So vortices are interesting. They're that's more recent research over the last decade than it had been prior. There was some speculation and some theory and everything, but until we got really good Doppler radar estimates and some other research projects involved, we really didn't know a whole lot about them. And now we know a lot about them, and we're still learning. So if you are in the path of a tornado, right, and you can't get into a safe place, all right, you can't go next door, bang on the door, so let me in, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, whatever. All right, so here's the deal. Like, what do you do? Well, first off, you got to be weather aware. So make sure you have a weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It'll tell you if a storm's rolling up on you long before it happens, so you have no excuse. But let's just say you forgot your phone at home. I don't know, whatever. And you can visually see a tornado. That's the other thing, is you have to actually visually see it. All right. Typically, not always, but typically, a tornado moves to the east and northeast direction. So that's the general movement of it. So what happens is, and this is from a storm chaser perspective, all right? So for storm chasers, when we're doing this, we want to get close to the tornado and film it, but we don't want to get hit by it, obviously. We want to be just on the edge, and then we kind of want to play this cat and mouse game. We video it, okay? Then we drive down the road a little bit, stop, video it, back down the road, stop, video it. What we're doing is, typically, we're going east, all right? That gets us away. It outruns a tornado. Remember, this thing's tomorrow, like, for example, 25 miles per hour. You can drive faster than that. That gets you out ahead of the tornado. Then you can stop and look at it, whatever. If you're storm chasing, you guys wouldn't want to do that. You just keep on going east, right? Now, let's say you can't. There's no road. Maybe there's traffic, whatever. Your second option is to go south. And that's probably the better option anyway, if you can do it in most cases, because that way, given on a certain day of the year, time of the year, those storms may not be moving slow. Maybe moving really fast, and you won't be able to outrun it. So typically, just get the heck out of the way. So you don't want to go north, usually. You want to go south because, like I said, the majority, like 95, probably plus 99%, somewhere in that range, always moves in that path. There are freak occurrences where they will go south for a while, but it's usually not very long before they rotate back around like a hook and just kind of do a little loop. So that may happen, but again, if you go south ahead of time, fast enough, early enough, you can still get out ahead of it from that. But if it's too late and it's already upon you, there's no time, and that's where you got to hit the ditch. So I don't know. That's what you got to deal with, and your brain has to do all that with a clear head. That's gonna be difficult, isn't it? When I was storm chasing the El Reno tornado, 2013, that was my last storm chase, May 31st. So you can see my video on YouTube, by the way. So I got the chase partner. We're doing all that like we normally do all the time, but there were so many looky-loos. They were just clogging up the roadways. We couldn't go east. Even though it was moving slow, we couldn't go east because everybody's moving like 25, 30 miles an hour. Like, if this thing speeds up, we're screwed, right? So let's just go south, get out of this mess, and then we'll go back east on another road. No problem. And that's when that thing just all of a sudden out of nowhere just grew, encompassed us, and so we're driving south in a Suburban. He's got it floored. Now, if you know a Suburban, it's got a V8. This thing's going to haul, right? We were, I think, 50 miles per hour. He had it floored. So what happened was the inflow of the tornado was pulling us back into it. So we were trying to drive south to get away from it, and it was unfortunately going south with us. And that is when my brain was like, that's not supposed to happen. That's never happened. I've chased for 20 years. This isn't going to happen. This really happening? So my brain's trying to process what's happening. And we're looking up above us, and we can see rotating rain curtains going around. Well, if you're ever in rotating rain curtains, you're in the bear's cage you're actually in the tornado circulation part. So we're technically in the outer parts of the circulation that's forming of the tornado. So we're actually now in the tornado, and I'm going, that's not good, right? But we still got to get south because we have no choice. There's no more roads. You commit, these roads out here in Oklahoma. So we're going south. I'm saying, floor it. He goes, I am. I'm like, better go faster. And so I'm videotaping all this, and I'm narrating what I'm seeing. And I'm realizing slowly that this cone that you guys normally see like on TV, the helicopter shots, all that kind of stuff, the cone is, obviously those little vortices are located in, is getting closer and closer. And it gets to the point where we're coming down an intersection. It's coming up to the same intersection. As I'm going south, it's coming in from the west. And so it's about to hit us. And so I'm thinking we're about to die. Now, my chase partner here is driving the car, and I don't want him to panic, right? What good is him to panic? That's not going to do any good. So I just tell him it's going to be okay. And instinctively, to protect ourselves, because I had the window down, because I was videoing all this still, because that's just the news person in me to document my own demise, I decided to roll up the window to protect us from debris. Now, that's just my brain thinking, well, this will save us. Even though that was a stupid, idiotic thing that wouldn't have done a thing. But for whatever reason, that was my brain going, yep, this will take care of it. I roll it up as though, can't get us now. I don't know what was going on upstairs. And then at that point, it was hold on, because it was coming, and we were this close to getting out of where we needed to get out of. And so we do. And we get out, and he afterwards, he goes, he's over there hyperventilating. And I'm just like, can I breathe? So yeah, I just realized that we just cheated death and escaped this huge tornado. And then after that, we were done. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. No more storm chasing for me. I said, it's too dangerous, too many people on the roads. We can't get our exit routes like we normally do. I said, this ain't worth it. And I was like, forget this. And so that's whenever I started doing all of this here and built a home studio, started doing live tornado coverage instead of me being out there chasing tornadoes and them chasing me. So on that night, that was a night where we tried to get home early. The tornado was still going, the storm was still going, and we were like, that's it, I'm done. I don't even care what happens. And we couldn't get home because everybody on the road were like, what in the world? It was like a concert let out for the whole city. And I'm like, who are these people on the roads? And that's when I found out later what had happened. I was like, you got to be kidding me. That was the dumbest thing to say. So yeah, you always want to stay wherever you are and stay in shelter. You never want to just leave. That puts yourself in so many harm potentials. And I discussed earlier what you have to deal with should you find yourself in that. It's not good. How are you going to think through all that? You're not even a meteorologist. You're not going to have that clear thought of what to do with practice, right? So you're in panic mode. Plus it's dark, you can't see. I mean, screw all that, man. Just stay put and stay in your shelter. So if anybody ever tells you get out and leave, just don't do that. Just make sure you're well protected. The only exception is, again, if you're in a mobile home, you got to leave. But you should have left long before the storm got there. You should have already had plans. But like I said, that just depends on how much you want to plan and how much you want to live, as far as giving yourself some time. And I do know I'm not making light of anybody that did do all that and still didn't make it. I get it. That stuff still happens. But the statistical side, we have so many tornadoes versus the number of people that die from them, which is great news. So if you from out of state and you think it's over, we have tornadoes here and thousands of people die, that's not the case. So it's always sad to lose somebody. It does happen. And I think, was it the Shawnee tornado in the Norman the other night? I think I haven't gone back and looked, but we had multiple tornadoes that day. I think there was almost a dozen that the Weather Service finally found from the storm tracks, and there was only 3, I think, that died that day. Out of a dozen tornadoes, that's, I hate to say even the 3 is no good, but the fact that there was that many kind of just shows you that it's a statistics and an odds thing and a shelter thing. And that's all in your favor as long as you pay attention and do what you can. So I always want to talk about that. There's enough gloom and doom and, scare stuff out there already. Let's see. So anyway, so that was my little story. I've told that before, but it's always good to kind of revisit. So yeah, there was a couple of storm chasers that died that year. Tim Samaras is, I think his son and another chaser with them. They were just in a small Chevy Cobalt or something. I think it was a rental car. They weren't chasing in their normal vehicle. They got caught because it went south toward us, right? And then went east and went back up to the north and did like a big U. And then ran over a body that was on that northern track, which luckily we didn't go that way because we'd have been worse off in that direct because that's where they were. And the Weather Channel was there, and they got flipped. Mike Seidel, I think, was in there. He was lucky to live. And then some other person who was a looky-loo, he died and left I think it was his wife and kids without a father. So that's dangerous. I mean, I know a lot of people just think it's fun. They go out there and do it, but it only takes one to really mess things up. Yeah, Shelby, it was Cole. I know there's one in Cole. I couldn't remember where the other two were. I didn't know if they were all in Cole or not. But yeah, I'm glad there was none in Shawnee. And I don't even know if the total was still 3. So that was I think the morning of. I saw some of that stuff, and then I think it was on to the next whatever other things I got to do. I never got caught up on it. Let's see. Cindy Chase, 2016-2020. So yeah, chasing is very glamorous on the movies, and on TV. In reality, it's not. Just to let you guys know. It's brutal. It's a lot of driving mostly with nothing to show for it. You get a lot of pretty sunset pictures sometimes, and you spend a lot of gas money. You visit some gas stations, and you drive all afternoon and evening, and you come home late, 10, 11 o'clock at night, go to bed, and get up and go to work the next day, exhausted. You do that over and over again. So if you're a storm chaser, you're thinking about it, or you want to be a storm chaser, just know that glamour, that money shot is few and far between, and you'll go so many times empty-handed, and you go because you love it, right? Now they try to do it to make money at it, and of course, anytime you try to make money at something, it usually doesn't work out as well as it did when you're doing it for the love of it. So that industry's changed a little bit. But chasing is driving, beef jerky, Cheetos, Mountain Dew, 18 hours a day. Yeah. All right. So anyway, that's it for me. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks guys for hanging in there. Just heard just a little bit, behind the scenes about how some of that stuff works in the weather world, from what you see, on TV or on the internet versus reality, and how it can be dangerous. So, thank you, Robert, by the way, for the stars, and thank all of you out there that sent me some stars on Facebook. When I started this broadcast, it said I was almost at 1 million. So I don't know how close I am. The little bar was almost at the very, very end. So I don't know if it's a few hundred, almost a couple thousand. I don't know what it is, but we're getting close to 1 million stars. That's awesome. Let's see. I am not going to be in the new Twister movie. They did not want a real meteorologist in there. Just to let you know. Or they would have hired me. So I don't know who's in it. Honestly, I don't know if anybody around here is in it. I don't know anything about it. I put out some feelers and I got nothing. So they weren't interested in real weather. So it's going to be all CGI and probably panic. But that's what makes a good movie, right? Panic, fear, pandemonium. But yeah, they could probably if they're in town shooting around. So they'll probably get some real tornado footage, or at least some storm footage that they can use in the movie. So whenever they put the movie together, they can actually have real weather in the background versus the fake stuff. So they did that. I think there was one scene in Twister original that actually had real storms in the background. The rest of it, I think, was all make believe. But anyway, so we'll see what happens. All right, guys. Hey, thanks again for tuning in tonight, and be safe tomorrow. I'll be around. I'll be doing some live tornado coverage once they get going, and we'll get you through them. All right, everybody. Take care. See you later. Good night.